Okay, I think we're live.
Yeah.
Yay!
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Hi, welcome, Ali. Thank you for joining us again for another manga masterclass episode with Natalia Batista. Um,
Hello.
Hopefully, we have worked out all the little bugs now, and you guys can hear us and see us and not hear two of us and all that
Yeah.
fun jazz. But if you do notice anything, please drop it in the chat. And if you have any questions while we're doing the episode, just drop it in the chat there, and I'll make sure that Natalia gets a chance to answer.
Mhm.
But today's episode is all about creating your characters and character design for your manga. So without further ado, I shall turn it over to Natalia.
Yeah. Um this episode will be more drawing. I prepared a little bit of uh, stuff just so we would get a head start on this because there's a lot of things to talk about and I want to focus on the character design, not the actual drawing tips. So some stuff I recommend you to practice on your own. And this also depends a little bit on how used you are to drawing. If you are very if you do it a lot, if you draw every day, you will notice that a lot of the things that I tell you is quite basic. But that's also because we don't know what level you, the viewers, are on. Some of you might be totally new to manga creations, and some of you might have created your own series already. So I'll be quite basic, and please just drop some more advanced questions in the chat field, and I'll answer them as well. So we'll have it on like several levels. We try to make it on several levels. But I think there's gonna be some good tips for the more advanced artists as well. So we've talked about creating the world, creating the story, kind of getting into the whole idea of the concept. And very soon after that, we want to create the characters because just like we said in the last episode, I talked about the CCW character concept world and how important it is that those three things kind of work together and become a good match. So we're going to focus on the character part today to kind of use what we have from an idea and create characters. And that's actually, I think, how a lot of manga artists start when they create a story. They start by thinking of a character, or maybe they don't even have a story. They just start drawing and just messing on a paper, and suddenly they have a character. And oh no, this character, I need to create a story around this character, or the story might come to them while they draw. That's usually how I create characters. I just come up with an idea, and then when I start drawing the character, a lot of the story or the background comes to me while I'm drawing, like adding details. And that's what we're going to talk about. So, first of all, my recommendation is to practice drawing, drawing characters and body shapes and movement and so on, and just practice every day. My recommendation is if you want to become a good manga artist, at least 1 to 2 hours a day. And that can be summed up to several hours in the weekend and less in the weekdays if you're too busy. But I would recommend you 1 to 2 hours every day, and then you will get really good in 1 year, I think. You just have to practice, and you have to practice everything. Don't just practice faces, because if you're on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see a lot of good artists that do headshots, a lot of headshots on their characters, and then when they're finally gonna make a manga, you can see that they've only practiced headshots because they don't know anatomy, they don't know how to make background drawings, they don't know how to color. They focus so clearly on one part, and remember, you need to kind of diversify your skill as well.
It's
So
amazing
practice,
how
practice.
many comic artists and manga artists that are starting out, and you'll notice there's a lot of hands in pockets or
Yeah.
convenient tufts of grass around their
Oh.
feet so they can get away with not drawing hands and feet. And
Yeah.
guys, the only way you get better at that is by practicing. It'll suck for a little
Yes.
while, but I will tell you there's another two artists, Gin and Banzarbo, who make Kamo and
Yes.
Undead Messiah with Tokyopop. And they both have these huge sketchbooks that they showed me, and it's just pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of like a right hand in just different
Yeah.
shapes and
Yeah.
gripping things and
Yes.
moving things. So make sure you practice that stuff. It's important.
Yeah, and you don't stop practicing ever. Like if you think that, oh, when I'm a pro I don't need to practice anymore, that's not true. Because in every in first of all, a skill is something you need to kind of maintain. If I stopped drawing now and didn't draw for 1 year, I would, in some ways I would get back to it, but it's also like a language. I would say drawing is like a language. It's like learning a language. When you learn language, first of all, you need to learn grammar and structure of the language, and that's pretty much the basics of sketching, basics of using a pen or using the tools. That's my point of it. Or drawing shapes. That's the basics of the grammar or the story, or the structure of a language. While when it comes to learning words, which is the next step when you learn language, first of all, you need to learn how to structure a sentence. And second step is to fill that sentence with information, to come up with words and just practice a lot of words. And that is what drawing is about. So first of all, you have to practice drawing. Like drawing a hand is learning the word hand, but in a picture. Think about it that way. And you can't say the word hand in a picture if you haven't practiced it first. No one is born with this skill. Everybody have to practice it. And some people might have some kind of leniency towards it, so maybe they are a little bit more, maybe they have a photographic memory, or maybe they are like the motorics, like the hand movements are more there for them.
Mm-hmm.
So some people might have it easier in the beginning, but no one is born with the drawing skill. Like everybody have to practice it. So that's the first thing. And basic art knowledge is actually what I recommend as a start. Anatomy, perspective. That's one thing that you see Jin and Banzarbo do a lot. They are so good. Like all the backgrounds in Camo and in Undead Messiah is made by hand. They don't use screen tones. Like so many, I see so many artists that say, oh, you don't have to learn how to do backgrounds because there are screen tones that you can use for that. Sure, there is screen tones. If you want to do, for example, a story in a Japanese high school there, or a school building, there's a lot of screen tones for that. But when you want to create, like in Kamo and Undead Messiah, in a city in Undead Messiah that is a city that is overrun by zombies, there won't be screen tones for that. Sorry. You'll have to learn how to draw backgrounds. So anatomy and perspective, so much important basic knowledge, color knowledge about how to use colors in an effective way, all these kind of basic things. And that's why I recommend you to go to anatomy classes, croquis, if you have that in your school or close by in a like community center or something where you can study croquis, for example. Or maybe start a study group together and just do lessons together. You can have full dressed on croquis. You don't have to have nude people. You can just draw your friend in full clothes. You don't have to undress, I promise you. Actually, for a comic artist, drawing full clothed people is more important, because we need to also learn how to make like folds, or wear like how t-shirts and jeans and everything look. And that's also one thing I see a lot of artists do. They create very baggy clothes on the character and think that I don't need to learn how to draw bodies because I'll just put a baggy shirt on the character. You can see that you don't know how to draw if you just try to take the easy path. So that's also one thing. And also, I want to remind you that there's a difference between sketching and final art. So in this video, there will be a lot of sketching, a lot of very simple lines, simple designs. I won't focus on details. We don't have time for that in a video of 1 hour. So my recommendation for you is to not focus too much on the details in this step. We'll talk more about details when we talk about the inking. But at this point, we'll focus on the overview of the character. How does everything correlate to each other and work together? So that's my introduction. Shall we
So
start?
we shall,
Yeah.
and I'll jump in very quickly because we got a question here from Haloed in Red Roses. They ask, I have a follow-up question from last week. It sounds like typically mangakas have another job to live on, and creating manga is a secondary income. Knowing this, what kind of schedule will editors expect? What is realistic? That's a really good question. That's also a very in-depth question. So as a very, very, very quick answer, the most important thing you can do as a creator is communicate with your editor. Your editor will work with you to make the schedule that fits with what you can do. So if you tell your editor, I can do, 8 pages a week, make sure you can do 8 pages a week because that's what your editor is going to expect, and they're going to plan the entire production process around that. But if you can only do 3 pages a week, tell your editor, I can do 3 pages a week, and they will work with you on that. So the short answer to that is communicate with your editor, talk with them, set realistic expectations. It's better for you to put in more padding time and get ahead of schedule than to miss deadlines. So that would be the advice there. Back to you,
And
Natalia.
also, and I think we mentioned this in maybe the first video, how important it is to not send in your first work and think that, oh, I'm gonna be published now, because the first work is usually the work where you haven't learned how fast you are, how, like, you're gonna say, oh, I can do 5 pages a week, but if you don't know that for sure, if you haven't timed yourself, then you don't know.
Yep.
And it might also depend on your work schedule or your life in general, and always, like you say, add in padding time to just to know that if I get sick and need to have 1 week off, I won't like be in a in a mess the week after. But yeah, the good thing is that usually non-Japanese non-Japanese editors have a lot of understanding for us artists being mm, mm, yeah crammed with a lot of other things. When it comes to Japanese editors, they have another. They demand a little bit more of you because they have a long list of people who would like to have your place. So why should they pick you if you're too slow? So there's very few manga artists in Japan that can be slow, that have the luxury of being slow. I know one, and that's Kaoru Mori, who does A Bride Story and Emma, a lot of high detailed work. She doesn't use assistants. She doesn't trust assistants with her work. She does everything on her own. And she's so big and famous and popular, so she just told her editors, you're gonna get pages from me when I'm done, and that's it. And they just
okay
wait patiently
that.
for her. Yeah, they just wait patiently for her because she's so good. But you have to get to that level.
You
So in
do.
the beginning, don't send in your first work. Practice in timing yourself and getting efficient in your style and your art, in how you create the comics. Try to take some don't sit too long in each step, and we're going to talk more about that when we come to inking, I think.
Yes.
So that's my recommendation. Time yourself. Yes, let's create characters here. I prepared some base characters. I hope you can see this in the video. It's not too light lines, I think. So I made some base body types here. And my first thing I would like to say is that to create characters is a lot about not creating one character, but remembering they are part of a group of characters, the cast. And it's all about creating a cast. We're going to talk about the main character first, and then we're going to talk about supporting characters and a little bit about background characters or background figures and the difference between these three, because these are three categories I think you should remember. So I'm gonna make this. This first one here is our main character, and this one is our support, and this one's gonna be a background, or like a maybe just a one scene character, background, or just in one or two scenes. So I'm gonna base them on some tips on how to make, because I can't make a whole cast of characters right now, but I think I can make 3 in this lesson and give you some tips and recommendations and how you should think about the characters. First of all, age and body shapes. So when it comes to a cast of characters, my recommendation is to, of course, you should base this in the concept. So if the concept is everything happens on a planet outside of, like, so far away, then you should think about, should everybody be humans? Maybe not. Maybe they should be aliens, or maybe they should be like, you have to, of course, the characters or the design of the characters have to be affected by the concept and the world that you've created. But even in those instances, or in certain genres, like if you choose the genre fantasy, like I did with Amalthea, Sword Prince Amalthea, I think you should still think more consciously about how you design the characters, because it's so easy to just think, okay, I'm gonna create an elf and it's gonna have long white hair and it's gonna have fair skin and green clothes and a bow, and you're like, yeah, great, but that's a stereotype. that's
Mm-hmm.
that's not gonna be fun unless you're kind of, I don't know, making um, um, a satire about the whole fantasy genre, which is so overly done. So we don't need more satire of the fantasy genre, do we? Not those kind of like genre. Maybe you should think in new ways. So when you're creating characters, when you're creating the world, and depending on what kind of genre you have, be a little bit more creative. Like, think outside of the box. So that's what we're gonna do here. We're gonna be creative and think, how can I make this a little bit different? So let's say the story we're gonna have this for is for a shonen seinen story, maybe, which is shonen manga is, for just those of you who might not know, it's the genre for boys. Seinen is for a little bit more teen boys, and these kind of genres is usually, it's usually a main character, so usually a guy, or very few times it's a girl. There's actually some that are with girl characters, but usually the story is, let's say, Jack and the Beanstalk. Do you know the base story for that one? The boy who gets these magical beans, and the beans, when he plants them, they lead to a castle in the sky where this giant lives, and he needs to fight the giant, yada yada. And this kind of story is kind of the story of a shonen manga. It's one boy needs to overcome a big hurdle to win something, to win honor or respect, or sometimes the hand of the girl, or yada yada, whatever.
It's frequently
And this
known,
kind of,
I think I've seen it known in writing circles here as the hero's journey.
yes, and that's the classical, more maybe Hollywood American style.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's kind of a, and that's also one thing I would recommend you to not only look at manga storytelling, but also storytelling in general.
Mm-hmm.
Read stuff by Neil Gaiman. Have done a lot of talk about the storytelling and writing. George R. R. Martin, several others have storytelling, how to do storytelling, either YouTube videos or articles or books. So that's my recommendation as well. Well, so let's say this is, first of all, our genre is kind of a fighting story, I think. That's our basic story.
Okay.
So let's come up with the world is maybe, I'm just coming up with something here. It's a desert world, and so this world is desert. There's a lot of sand. They need to have protection. It's gonna be a little bit steampunky, maybe, or maybe more terrapunk. Maybe this is another kind of genre. Like, maybe we can go for that story. So we have to first think about, how do these characters look in this world. So the face and the hairdo is the first step. How, like, we have to make the face of the main character interesting. So I'm gonna zoom in on the face, so we have the face clearer here. The face and the hairdo, because we'll see this character a lot. If this is the main character, we'll see them a lot in the picture. So that it needs to be a very distinctive and interesting hairdo. So I'm gonna actually make the hair like, maybe, let's try to just try play with shapes. Let's make some kind of, I don't know, bangs. Does this work? Nah, maybe not. Maybe something more curly. Maybe it's a little bit like too much. There's so much wind in this land that there's always like the hair is always a mess. Maybe like
Mm.
this. I don't know. Like just play around with it, and you'll see what you get. So I think I will go for, maybe I'll go for something shorter. Maybe something that is backwards instead. So the hair is like, there's so much wind that the hair is always backwards. I don't know. Maybe that's a thing.
That's
So you
cute.
have to think about, yeah, how does the style of the character work with the world? So if there's a lot of wind in this desert world, maybe this character, let's say it's a he for this time, but I don't think you should gender them too early, because sometimes you can think of, oh, maybe this should be a girl, or maybe it should be a genderless character. I don't know. So I'm just gonna make some kind of bandana, because in this world there's a lot of wind. So you see how while I draw, I make up a story about this character, why they have these clothes on, or why they have this style. So this character is gonna have hair going back like this,
And
because
that will
there's so
help
much
you
wind.
remember, right? If you're coming
Yeah.
up with reasons why they look the way they do, when you're on
Mm-hmm.
page, 32 and you're thinking, wait, how many buttons does this jacket have? Oh, well, that's right, because the
Yes.
buttons represent the rankings in this,
Yes.
military that they're in.
Yeah.
So yeah, by attaching significance to these decisions you're making about your designs, you're going to find it a lot easier
Yeah.
to keep track of continuity.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, I'm gonna like, yeah, so that's a good idea. And I also recommend to not add too many details, because a big risk when you're adding too many details is that you're gonna forget some. I
Yep.
had one character once that had a lot of piercings, and at some point I forgot what ear the piercing was in, and they traveled around the face. So sometimes they were on the wrong nose side and yada yada, and that's tricky. So
And
don't.
someone out there will notice.
Yes, especially the fans. They're gonna email you. On this page, you made the piercings wrong. So I'm gonna make this character a little bit. I don't know. I'm just gonna make simple design for this character. So I'm not gonna focus on the details right now. But this character has a little bit droopy eyes, as you can see here. That's kind of a character distinction I'm gonna make on this character, and a very wide mouth. Very wide mouth. And I think this is a very plain design, so I need to add something, and what you can add is scars, birthmarks, freckles. You can add tattoos, or maybe piercings, or whatever. What more can you add? Maybe you can add glasses, of course,
Mhm.
like things like that. So I'm gonna add, for example, or I can add, for example, one little uh, lump of hair that is always outside like this. So this is a very distinctive. Maybe I'm gonna add one more thing, but maybe that's also something that I can add on. Like scars can come by the story, like can be added to the story. But especially the main character doesn't have to have too many details, and that's the reason for that. And that's because a main character actually needs to be like identifiable, or like a lot of different people should be able to identify themselves in the main character.
Mhm.
So don't make the character too complicated, because then you're gonna limit the people that can feel like this is me.
Mhm.
So don't make it too complicated. So I'm gonna have this character. So now I think I'm done with the hair. I think I'm gonna be happy with this design. Like it's a little bit of a simple design right now. I can always add more. And my recommendation is actually to work on the main character a lot, to design and kind of perfect the design of the main character. So maybe the main character won't have the bandana in the end, but this is because this is the first time I draw them. And maybe the only time, I don't know. But okay, so let's say I would be happy with this design of the main and the head of the character. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit to see what clothes we can add. And now we had the world was in a desert. I'm thinking more like, how can I so and how can I make this maybe feel like it's this main character should be still unique, but have clothes that match this world. So they need to have some kind of cape, but I need to make the cape unique for this character.
Mhm.
Of course, I need to decide also if this character is rich or poor, yada yada. I'm gonna make the character an adventure of some sort. Probably traveling alone for some reason. Maybe that's part of the character's history, and maybe the character has a cape, and at one point it was whole and nice, but right now it's very like broken and shabby. Like it's not really gonna be a clean, nice cape. It's gonna be a little bit of like cut edges and stuff like that. So that's gonna be the character's cape, for example. And maybe I should add something else to the cape to make it a little bit more unique. Maybe it has a big, I don't know, a star on the side or something like that. That could be a cool design like this. A six-pointed star. And it could be maybe the six-pointed star means something. Maybe that's like an affiliation or something, or a marking of some sort. So this one has a six-pointed star like there on the side. And maybe and this is also one thing you have to remember in manga, you have to decide what should be white and what should be black, because you're going to have white and black and gray to be working with when you do the manga. If you do it in paper version, in black and white paper version, if you do an online manga, you have a little bit more colors, of course, possibilities. But I'm going to actually make this star black because I think that's a good way to make this character stand out. You can always see on the page where the character is because it has this big black star on the cape. I think that's going to be a good design choice.
Yeah, we have a question here, actually, Natalia,
yeah.
if you don't mind. Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. Haloed in Red Roses says, how often can characters change hairstyles and clothing before you start confusing the audience? That's a really good question.
Yes, and I think this is also a very good question, especially if you're gonna make a more everyday story, like a story that like characters that go to school or go to work. Then you don't look the same every day, and I would say you can still make changes within a spectrum. So, for example, a character that has red short hair, can sometimes have tiny ponytails in the side, as long as the hair is the same like color or tone, of course, screen tone. Or for example, you can also differentiate the characters by using other things in the face. So and that's why it's important to, like I said, with this character has droopy eyes, the next character can't have droopy eyes, because if they for at some point maybe stood in the shower together, I don't know, and had wet hair and the hair would be down, you can't have the same faces. So this is very important to make the characters' faces different, because then if you remove the hair and the clothes, the character would still look the same.
Yeah.
So it's so important to make a character design the face unique as well without the hair. So cover up the hair and just see how can I make the character design cool and unique. In this story, it doesn't have to be unique in the whole world of manga. It just has to be unique in this story.
And that's
so you can differentiate.
I was going to say, you'll also have moments in your story where there may be plots. For example, in Sir Princess Amalthea, where there's a little moment where Amalthea and Ossian actually end up switching sexes, and it's a little like walking in your shoes moment. And of course, that means they then have to go get themselves new clothes. So you have a plot-driven reason for your characters to change up their look. You'll see in a lot of manga, though, someone's clothes will get ripped up in a big fight, or they have to go in disguise. So I think if you've got a reason for doing it, those bigger changes can be done. But like Natalia was explaining, smaller changes, like, you know, going from your hair down to being in a ponytail or something, that's fine. That's think about sort of how often you change your clothes in normal life and that sort of thing, and look at examples from other manga.
Yeah. And also it's a good way to think that the character can have a hairstyle type and also a clothing style type, kind of that. Okay, maybe this character is more into dark cool clothes, while this character is more into cutesy pink, or and maybe this other character is more like plain t-shirt and jeans style. And so you can differentiate the characters by just a style, and they can still change clothes every day or never seen, but you will still see that it's the same character, because this character clearly is a gothic Lolita and will always have gothic Lolita dresses, but different dresses. So that's a good way, I think, also to remember that the character can be more of a type. So I'm right now I have made, as you can see, the black star as is one marker, and then this arm thing. I don't know yet what it is. Maybe it has a bigger meaning, or maybe just a cool design. So right now I'm just trying out different designs and seeing how I can make this character interesting. So this character, like I said, it's in the desert, so it needs to be quite dressed up. But it's also going to be very hot, so the character needs to be able to take off some clothes and still have a very like breathing, be able to have wind in the clothes, or yeah, not too warm is
Mm-hmm.
what I want to say. And maybe in this world, and there might be also, I don't know, a good reason to have some kind of certain boots. And you should also think about what kind of like mechanics can be in this world. So maybe they have certain boots, like almost like snow boots, that kind of help them walk on the sand or something like
Mm.
this. I don't know, that is kind of tied to their shoes. So just think of how would you in this world move around, and just play around with it. Maybe this won't end up in the final draft, but it's just playing around with the design and being creative, I think. So, and like I said, important, think about what should be black and what should be white on the clothes, especially in a shonen manga, because a lot of shonen manga is they don't have much screen tones actually in shonen manga. They use
Mm-hmm.
very little screen tones. Mostly it's just black and white, and they differentiate the characters with black and white. I don't really know. I think it's just a style thing that came about, but I also think the
Yeah.
reason might be because it's much cheaper. Because screen tones is usually something you have to put on by an editor or an assistant. I mean, and sometimes you don't have enough money to pay for an assistant, and you don't have time. If you're gonna make for Shonen Jump, you're gonna have to make 20 pages each week, and you don't have time to put screen tones on. So it's just maybe two or three pieces screen tone on each page, and then off to the printers. So black and white is one important thing, to a way to make the character stand out. This is a main character. I think this is enough details. Don't put too many details. And also we can see how this character could move around with his shoes, and has this bag over here. This is very important. Something to carry stuff in. We said this character is an adventurer. Remember that if it is an adventurer, if it's a character that moves around a lot, it has to carry things somewhere. Does
Mm-hmm.
it have tools with it? Does it have weapons with it? How do this character protect themselves, both from in fighting, but also from the weather? So, for example, if I said this is a character that travels in desert, so maybe they need to have. Maybe I should add clearly here that they have a hood on this cape. So this is a hooded cape. There's a hood on this cape. And maybe they also should have goggles instead. And this is maybe more steampunky. So maybe this bandana should be a goggles set instead. So they
Mm-hmm.
put down the goggles. And maybe they should even have a mask somewhere, not on the face, but when they put it on, it could be like almost like a face mask like this. So when they're in the desert, they don't get sand in the mouth. So that's also like, always think about how can I make this character fit into the world. Don't try to make the like, if you have a good concept for the world and the concept and the idea, don't make sure the character matches it, and don't try to change the concept just to make the character look cool.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I think, the main character. I'm gonna think about what else. I'm gonna see my um, little sheet note here. So yeah, we talked about face and hairdo, clothes, personality traits. So also think about, how does this character, is there something that this character always does? Like, for example, maybe this character always clenches their fists like this, always have like clenched fists, because for some reason they're always a little bit tense. Or maybe this character, I don't know, always chews on a little bit of, I don't know, straw. I don't know where they should get the straw, but maybe that's something. I don't know. Come up with something that's very typical for this character.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this character likes to, I don't know, smile a little bit with the, like this, for example, be a little bit cheeky. I don't know. That's a personality trait, maybe something that in the movement or in the body style or in the like how the character moves and how they interact with the world is a very typical personality thing. So how does the character walk, for example? Do they stomp or do they tip? That's a good idea to think about. So when you've created the main once, I want you to draw more pictures with the same character, and this is both practicing, because when it's about drawing, it's all about making the hand learn the lines. It's a memory of the muscles, a muscle memory.
Muscle memory.
Yes, you have to put this character into your muscle memory. And that's why if someone, I've drawn Amalthea so many times, so if someone woke me up 2 o'clock in the morning and said, draw Amalthea, I would do it while sleeping. I could draw her.
I feel like I have seen you at shows. Guys, like, I cannot even describe to you what it is like watching Natalia sit there with a Sharpie and a sheet of paper, and in like 10 seconds, she's got a full head and shoulders bust, like full detail picture of Amalthea. It's absolutely insane.
Yes.
It's amazing to watch.
It's all in the muscles, all in the muscles. So that's like, and don't feel bad just because you don't know the character by just directly, because this is practice. It's all about practice.
Yes.
I've practiced drawing Amalthea so many times, so at this point I know her, and that's what you need to know with your character. You need to draw them so many times that you know them, and that's going to be much easier when you're going to make the actual story.
Yeah.
So, and this is, even professionals have a hard time in the beginning because they haven't gotten to know the character yet. So they have to practice a new character. It gets easier every time you make a new comic. Like, the more comics you make, the more easy it becomes. But it's still going to be hard every time you start a new story.
Yeah.
So a supporting character. The supporting character, it's going to be... the most important thing is to make them cool, but not too cool. So this one needs to be, like, the main character needs to be the coolest or the most interesting or the most recognizable. Like Naruto, for example. Naruto is very much a very, like, bright colors, strong aesthetic, very energetic character. The design is very energetic, like yellow and orange and stuff like that, and blue. A good combination. Also, what Masashi Kishimoto, who drew Naruto, he used contrast colors. So blue and orange is on the opposite sides on this color circle, and that's why it's a good combination. And that's what also you should remember. So if I would make this character in color, maybe I would use green on the cape, and maybe on the other side of the green is kind of reddish. So maybe I would make the pants reddish, and that way this character would stand out, for example. So, and if I would like to use maybe more, I don't know, orange hair, I need to use the opposite of orange is blue. So then blue pants, or beige and blue is a good combination as well. So always use different side of the color circle. Over to the supporting character. So the supporting character should be still cool and interesting, because this could be, think about the cosplay factor. Like, if the main is the character that everybody wants to cosplay, then the support should be the one that everybody's body wants to cosplay. So they cosplay together. You have to think about the cosplay factor. It's very important. And so I make the main, but I make the support a little bit different. So, for example, I had darker hair for the main, so maybe lighter hair, and maybe not backwards, because I had the hair going backwards. Maybe I'll make the hair, I don't know, wavy, just to make the character different. And maybe I'll make it a little bit shorter in the back. So maybe it's just a wavy design like this. And I'm just gonna make a simple design. So remember, we had droopy eyes on the main character, so I'm gonna have very round eyes on this character, like this. Oh, I think I need to zoom in a little bit, so we'll see it better. So I'll see both the main and the side character. This character is a little bit more roundish eyes, like this, and maybe lighter eyebrows, so not so thick eyebrows. I'm gonna make them actually empty inside like this, but it doesn't need to be, the character doesn't have to be blonde. This could be reddish, or this could be blue hair, or anything. Like, the actual color of the hair is not decided yet. So, and the good thing with, especially if you do like fantasy or sci-fi, you can have very or modern, you can have very crazy hairstyles. If you're gonna do a historical story, maybe you need to be a little bit more historical correct. And I remember the nose on the main character was a little bit wider, so I'm gonna make the nose of this one a little bit thinner, like this, and maybe a smaller mouth, like this, maybe. So this is more of another kind of character. As you can see, they're a little bit different. And an ear, hair, and maybe a braided, like there's a braid back here. The character has a braid in the neck, like this. This might be a cool design. And this character also have some kind of I don't know, cape or something, but the cape needs to be a little bit different. So I'm gonna make the cape. So now it was too close. I'm gonna make the cape maybe more like something that hangs in the front and then on the sides like this, maybe, to make them a little bit different. Because you have to remember they needs to be able to work together. If these characters are going to be in the same scene, and if they're supporting characters, they're probably going to be a lot in the same scene, or if they're even rivals, they're going to be a lot as well. When you make rivals to the main character, remember to make them similar but different. It's a bit tricky. It's to make the character look like the main but opposite. So that's what, if you can think about Naruto and Sasuke as a good example. Naruto is blonde, Sasuke is dark haired, and Naruto has a lot of colors. Sasuke has not so much colors, more like whites and dark blue. So that's one thing you should remember, to make the character similar but different. Like they need to be like both of them are young boys, for example, so they're very similar, but then they have to differentiate themselves. So this character have, for example, some kind of a black uh, top here as well. I think they're from the same kind of town, so they probably have similar, like this kind of pants. Like if you know, for example, in Attack on Titan, they all have uniforms, and that's also very tricky. Or if you know, in Full Metal Alchemist, also a lot of the characters have uniforms. You have to be able to make the uniforms still unique for each character in some way, or how they use the uniforms. So maybe this one has maybe shorter pants, but you see, this character, it still looks like it's from the same world, or the same town, the same kind of fashion, but it's a little bit different. So I'm gonna make these kind of short pants instead for this character. But and then maybe darker pants down here, like a pants on pants, because they don't want to have sand on their skin because that hurts. And then some kind of boots, and they also have these kind of walking boots to be able to walk in the sand. So just while you draw, just be creative and talk while you draw, like, oh, maybe this happens, or maybe this happens. And if you come up with some good ideas, write them down, because it's going to be useful for you when you make the story. And sometimes I even change the story when I come up with really good ideas, and I have to change the story a little bit to make this fit, because this idea was a really cool scene I could add, like the scene when they maybe get stuck in the sand because one of the shoe fell off, and then I have to change the story. But that's still like a cool thing I could add, like this. And this character also needs to be able to travel, so some kind of bag. What kind of bag? Maybe a rucksack, something on the back. So I'm gonna add something for that, like here, like this. So yeah, remember the black and white. It's gonna be important. So this one also have these black armbands or arm protections. I don't know why. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's a fighting reason why they have this. You also have to, when you make a fighting manga, you have to remember what kind of style. Like, do they fight with their hands, with magic, with swords? That can also affect what kind of clothes they're gonna have, or the style of the clothing or the character. If they are gonna fight a lot with the bodies, maybe they need to have a lot of muscles. I think this shonen manga, either it's not so much about fighting, or maybe they fight with their minds, or maybe they fight with magical stuff, or maybe they have some kind of mechas or something that they fight with. I talked about steampunks. It would be cool if it was some kind of steampunky mechas that they needed to work with. And this one also has a mask, so the mask is down right now, like this, and then they just pull up the mask and protect their face. Yeah, so this is the main and the support. You can see how they are similar but different. And if they were in the same frame, if you only saw this part of the characters, it would be clear that they are different characters. Remember that they need to work when they speak in the same scene and they are talking to each other. You need to know which one is talking or which one is which. And like I said before, if you cover up the hair of this character and you cover up the hair of this character, they still have different faces, so it would be easy to differentiate them. Maybe I even add some like birthmark on this one on the top face here, just to make them a little bit different, even more different. Yes. Okay, so something more about the support character design. Diversity. Remember diversity in skin colors as well. So I would, for example, prefer to have these characters have different. One of them should have different skin color, because I think that's a good way also to differentiate them. And because I think there's not enough mangas, famous mangas that have darker skin characters, I would definitely make the main character a darker skin character, because I think we need that. This one will have a darker skin. I'm not gonna color the whole skin. I'm just gonna make like blotches like this, and just remember. Which means this character, I would probably use tones later on. If I would tone this manga, I would definitely use tones on this screen tone, on this face. And in Sword Prince Amalthea, I use screen tone on the prince Ossian, and it's quite fun actually, because then you can, if you have a white white character with no screen tones on the face, you don't know if it's light or dark in the room. Well, of course you can add shadows, but like with a darker skin character, you can actually add highlights, and that's pretty fun. I think I like scratching in the or like taking away some of the screen tones to add highlights as well. So this one would be darker, and this one would maybe have a little bit more of a tan complexion. I don't know, something like so. Maybe I think a little bit tan, maybe too orangey, maybe a little bit brownish. There, some kind of a little bit tanned complexion, and I would think the hair would be cool if it was kind of greenish, very light greenish, like almost alien greenish, something like that.
Oh, I like that.
Maybe.
That looks
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and also the beige and the green is also not too far from each other, but also a little bit on opposite sides of the spectrum. So it's a bit it they work together, but not but they are not the same color. And I was also gonna probably use the same color for the cape, or maybe not. Maybe I'm gonna use a little bit darker red color for the cape, for this cape, to match the hair. That would be cool with the hair, I think. And for the pants, maybe red and maybe some turquoise, maybe. Not too bright. It's gonna be a darker turquoise, I think. That could be a cool design. So think about the colors as well, because that might affect where you're gonna use screen tones. But we're gonna talk more about screen tones in the later episode, but don't use screen tones as colors. That's very important. But we're gonna talk more about that later. Finally, if we're gonna have a background character, don't make. Do we have any questions, by the way?
We don't have any right now. I'm keeping an eye on things.
Okay.
Nothing right now.
Yeah. I have a cat here. Everybody, hello,
Oh, hi, Kitty. Yay.
Hello. Cat intervention. Okay, so the background character. Now remember, these characters are the main. So by making the background character, or this kind of side character that steps in now and then, or just in one episode or one scene, we still have to make them interesting, because many times these characters can be the ones that people want to cosplay as well, especially if they're rivals or bad guys. People like cosplaying bad guys. So I'm gonna make this character also very distinctive, but not overshadow the other characters. So still, I'm gonna make them like think about them together. So maybe this character has like long hair. The other character doesn't have long hair. this one has really, really long hair, like so. And maybe it has even some bangs. Maybe this character is like a wild character, so it doesn't cut their hair. Maybe this character have like, I don't know, really like bushy eyebrows. Maybe even a unibrow. I don't know. This character has a unibrow. Yes, this has a unibrow. And then really thin eyes, really angry thin eyes like this. And the nose. Not too much similar to the others. I'm gonna make the face a little bit chunkier, like this, a little bit more chunky, like this, maybe a little bit wider nose. I don't know. So just trying around different styles. This character is gonna have, maybe this character always has their mask on. Yeah, this character always has the mask on. So you don't know, maybe you don't even know the gender of this character because the mask is always there. That's gonna be a cool thing, maybe.
I like that.
And maybe the character, yeah, and maybe the mask even has a detail, like a skull, like there's a skull on the mask. I don't know, like this, like there's a death skull on the mask always. I don't know, maybe. So this character is dangerous because it has a skull, and maybe it even always keeps the cape up, a little bit mysterious, like this. The cape is up, so you just see this really, really long hair, like this, and the cape. So yeah, you can see how this character is different from the others, but they don't, I wouldn't say this is a main character because I still make them quite plain. The hair is quite plain, and I'm gonna make a big cape that is gonna cover up a lot of the design of the character just to make them not too interesting. Maybe if I later on make the character a more standout character that's gonna be in the story, I'm gonna make maybe the change the character's design or something. You can always change the design after some time, especially if they're a recurring character that comes and goes. I think actually changing is a good way to show the reader directly or indirectly that there's an evolution. Oh, so now this character evolved because it got new clothes. That's
To
how
use
it
an
goes.
example for that, actually, recently, as I know a lot of people are really excited about, Avatar: The Last Airbender is now on Netflix. So like
Yes.
everyone else, I rewatched it, and I think that show in particular is very good for showing character evolution through
Yeah.
hairstyles, through clothing, through accessories. And you
Yeah.
can again, as we were mentioning earlier, you can still tell that they are the same characters, but you can see their growth and their
Mhm.
journey through their expressions and the way
Yes.
they hold themselves and the kind of clothes they wear. So it can be a
And
really,
they,
really good
yeah.
storytelling device. It can be like a prop for your storytelling.
Yeah, and they even grow up a little bit, so you can see how they mature as well. And that's, I think it's very good, especially if you're gonna make a story about, like for example, a shonen, where a lot of the story is about growing and growing as a person, but also growing in strength in many ways. And then it's very important to have like. So if this is the base, the starting position, I have to also think about how do I evolve this character to make them seem like they grow as a person, and but also as a in their bodies and in their minds. So yeah, so now I make this character a little bit like so, and
So
this character don't have these boots. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
apologize. We actually have a question now, kind of tied in with what we were
Yes.
just talking about. How in depth of a background is needed when writing a character? Do you go back to their birth before that? Um, that's a really, really interesting question. I'd love to hear
Hmm.
your view on that.
I would say at this point, when you're just designing the design of the character, I think it's better to focus on what's actually necessary for the character. Of course, it would be fun to know a little bit about the backgrounds, and a lot of the personality is based on how they live their life. So, for example, if I have a character that I want to be a character that's very independent and maybe don't trust other people, I need to also think about why did that become a personality trait, because you're not born that way. Maybe the character lost their parents at an early age, or maybe they have been through loss in their life, or maybe they have been cheated on, or some kind of like they can't trust people because of reasons. So that's a good reason, but you don't have to think about what school did they go to, or who were their best friend in the first grade. Like, you don't have to think about all the small details unless it's important.
Yeah.
So when you create a character, focus on what's important and then make up a story for that. So it could be a little bit of a Swiss cheese with a lot of holes, as long as the cheese is still there.
And
You get it?
I absolutely agree with you, Natalia. And I will use a bit of a weird example here. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm the dungeon master for my group. And one thing I always warn my players is don't write too much backstory
Mm-hmm.
because it will change. Um, like you said, come up with the basic concepts you want to know. Sort of, did they grow up rich or poor? What kind of area did they grow up in? What was, the figure out the
Yeah.
basic things that drive them and that have shaped them into who they are. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but leave enough room, because as you start writing and as you start making things, like Natalia was saying, oh no, maybe they get stuck in the desert and they can't leave because they lost their shoe. Maybe that triggers something in your head and makes you think, oh well, okay, well, what if this character's grandfather used to make these
Mm-hmm.
shoes, so now they have the
Yes.
tools
Yeah.
to gather local supplies and make some new ones. And that's like a new thing about that character that you just created purely because
Mm-hmm.
of the storyline that you had. So make sure you leave enough room for that kind of character growth and development as well.
I think it's a good idea to actually, before you start your manga or your story, to just draw a lot of pictures with the character, put
Mm-hmm.
them in different situations. Like, how would these three characters, like the background character wouldn't be there, but let's say that the main and the support walks into a building. What kind of building? And they meet the background character. What happens? Like, do they fight? Do they just smack talk? What happens? Or do they become friends? I don't know. So just make up small scenes, and you don't have to draw them as comics if you don't want to. You can just draw one or two like pictures, like and think about how would the characters react. All these kind of this is more like getting to know your character, just like when you're getting to know a new person. Like, think about it as the first dates.
Mm-hmm.
don't don't marry one on the first date, and think about the comic as a marriage, because it's going to be for a long while. You're going to work a long time on it.
Get a prenup for
Go
your
on some
comic.
yeah, go on some dates first, like see if the character is the right for you. And some, like, actually one good tip I got in one writer's book is actually to do this with a lot of different characters in your story, like designs and information about the characters. Like, write a lot about them before you make the full story,
Mm-hmm.
because you might find out that, oh yeah, I thought this one was supposed to be the main, but this was a really boring character. It doesn't have a good story arc. Maybe this one should be the main.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Wow.
So maybe you just thought it differently. Maybe you've seen the story from the wrong angle. So by doing these kind of like exploration of the characters before you make the full story, you can actually find the right way to make that story, to present the story to the reader, I think.
Yeah, that's excellent. And we actually have one more question here. We have Jessica H. Voice asks, what led to Princess Amaltea's final design? Those curls are wild.
Actually, I was thinking of this of the cosplay factor, and I had another
Yeah.
editor for when I was working on this, and that editor, she actually said, "Wait a minute, if this is a gender flip society, shouldn't the girls have shorter hair just because it's easier to fight with?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, it's easier to fight with, but first of all, she's a nobility, and
Mm-hmm.
nobilities in the 1700s and or 1600s, they had a lot of hair."
Yep.
And second of all, she I need her to be cosplayable. I need her to be interesting for cosplayers. And at that point, I was looking through a lot of Gothic Lolita magazines and Sweet Lolita magazines, and these kind of big curly wigs, they really stood out. I'm like, big curly wig and a bow. That's so opposite to how this character is, because she's very much of a tomboy. So that would be a contrast I think would work very well. So also think about contrast is a good way to make a character. For example, we have the background character here. This is a character that might be maybe this character is really sweet. Maybe this character likes kittens, and maybe this character really likes candy. I don't know. Maybe this is a really sweet character, but it looks badass. But it maybe is a really sweet character. So those kind of contrasts is really fun to play with, and it's a good way to make character memorable. Like think about the funniest characters from, for example, One Piece. It's the most memorable the characters that are crazy, a little bit quirky, and have a lot of contrast in them. Yeah.
That's cool. That's great. Thank you.
Yes. So I think if any of you who are watching this is actually doing the manga project with us, would you like to, Kae, tell us about the competition we have, or the little contest we have?
Yeah, so we're actually having a little contest that we're running along with this whole program, and the goal is, what we want you guys to do is follow along with us. Don't just watch, but put your hand to this. Give it a try. Try and write your own little manga. It might only be maybe 10 pages. It could be very short. You might end up sparking something that turns into a whole project. But what we would like is to have you submit your designs. Send them to us. Show us what you're making, and we'll pick out a couple of winners who will actually get to do a one-on-one video call with Natalia. She will give you a portfolio review. She'll give you some really good tips and advice. She'll tell you where you're doing great, where you can improve, give you individual tips to make the best manga that you can. And of course, on the Tokyopop end as well, we will be sending out some copies of Sword Princess Amalthea to winners as well. So please do follow along. If you've missed any episodes, or if you want to go back and rewatch, you can find all of them on our YouTube channel, or you can go to tokyopop.com/manga masterclass. And we will be linking all of the videos there. And you'll be able to go back and watch as many times as you like. Of course, if you have any questions, if 5 minutes after we end the stream you think, I should have asked that, you can send an email to Kae, that's Kae, at tokyopop.com. And if I can answer it, I will answer it. And if not, I'll go ahead and forward it to Natalia, and we'll make sure that you get an answer to your question. So please do, join along with us and have some fun with us.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Natalia.
Yes, I'm adding the address. Yeah, I also think that it's like worst case scenario, you've made a manga.
Yeah.
Like really, like do it.
Yeah. Give it a try. Like, you don't have to show anyone if you don't want to. Maybe you just want to follow along with us and do it, and it's just for you, and that's completely valid, and that's just like a fun hobby at that point, Yep. It can be fun to do something, but who knows, maybe you'll realize, oh wow, I really enjoyed, maybe you'll even realize I enjoyed this part of the process, like I enjoy the writing side, but maybe not so much the drawing side, so maybe then you start writing some stuff. There's so much fun you can have with this, and getting out that creative energy is so rewarding. It can be really cathartic. I can't recommend it enough. So definitely, please do give it a try. We will have information later on in the class. We'll put up information about where to submit things to. But for now, please get started. Get thinking. Start thinking about your characters.
May I say one final thing?
Of course.
Yeah, so like you all know, my character Amalthea, Sword Princess Amalthea, it's a 3-book manga, and right now I'm actually working on like a standalone sequel, but it's not gonna be a manga, it's gonna be a visual novel game for computers and phones. So I just want to like a heads up, it's not up yet, but 1 week from now I'm gonna open up the Kickstarter for this game, and the free demo will be up. But we're going to talk about that in the next episode in 2 weeks from now, because I think that also ties in a lot about storytelling and manuscripts. There's a lot of manuscript writing when you make visual novels. So I've learned a lot in this project. We're going to talk more about that. So, but heads up, and we're going to put it in the link in the description next week when the site is up.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to hear more about that. So next week, make sure you come back next week. What's our class about next week, Natalia?
What?
What is our class next week? What are we teaching? Sorry. The week after next.
From now. Yes. 2 weeks from now, it's gonna be manuscripts, I think. I'm just gonna double check. I'm pretty sure it was manuscripts next time.
Sorry,
Because
I kind of dropped that on you there.
I don't have my sheet note. Yeah, I think it's manuscripts. So
Okay.
until then, focus on your characters, and next time, 2 weeks from now, we're gonna go on with writing, actually. So until then, just draw a lot of pictures with your characters and get to know them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us again, guys. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you, as always, to Natalia for her excellent teaching. Yeah, get to work on your ideas this week, and we will see you again in 2 weeks' time for the next episode. Thanks so much, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.